Hi everybody, a very warm welcome to my channel, Nellie the Narcissist. Thank you so much for joining today. As many of you know, I'm not a narcissist, but if you are newly subscribed or if you are joining today, welcome. Nellie is the character that I portray in my comedy skits to raise awareness about narcissistic abuse and relationships. If you haven't seen those skits, then I'm going to put a link in the description box for you to check out. And in these podcasts, I look at both the spiritual and the psychological dimensions of narcissistic abuse and bring them both together. So if you appreciate the work that I do and this video today, and if you resonate, then please do like it, share it with anybody that you think it might help, and comment your thoughts down below. I've been wanting to make a video actually about psychopathic narcissists for a while, because it is one thing to find out that you're caught up and you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and then it's a completely different thing to figure out that the person that you have allowed really close to you, that you thought that you loved, is also a psychopath. And there are a lot of people that don't know what a narcissist is. And then there's even fewer people that actually know what a psychopath is. And if you were anything like myself, you didn't know that somebody could have NPD and psychopathy, because there's so many crossovers. And absolutely, somebody with NPD can be a psychopath. Now, many people have this idea that a psychopath is a person that commits violent crimes, serial crimes, which leads them to prison. We don't realize, or people in general don't realize, that a psychopath, many psychopaths, do not commit those kind of violent crimes. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't if they could get away with it. But most of the time, they don't want to be caught or found out, and they definitely don't want to go to prison. They mimic you and I, and they're disguised as highly moral and ethical, law-abiding people with love and empathy and understanding. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're far away. They look nothing like those classic depictions of what we imagine a psychopath to be, but they're no less dangerous. In fact, like I said, being so well hidden, it makes them more dangerous. So in this video, I want to look at this collective unwillingness that we have to look at evil and also reshape what we consider that to be. And I also want to reflect on how all of this leads to a blind spot in societal programming that gets us to believe that bad people are actually good somehow. And also how we can basically put ourselves in danger by ignoring the existence of evil in everyday life. We as modern humans, as a collective, we have a refusal to acknowledge evil. As we've moved into the era of technology, we tend to look upon ourselves with the superiority of advancement, like we're the cleverest people that have ever lived. And although technology has certainly come a long way, we've actually moved away from spirituality, obviously, and we tend to look upon the beliefs of spirituality and religious scriptures as being redundant. People for thousands of years, though, they believed in evil spirits, and they connected the spiritual to an everyday part of life, not only in religion, but in tribes and indigenous communities. And although we look upon them now as primitive, they'd probably look upon us as stupid and arrogant, because we can fix satellites, but we have no awareness really of ourselves. Evil spirits and demonic entities, they seemed more fitting to the days when we lived life by candlelight, and even when we sat around campfires, right? But these days we feel like they don't exist, they're not here. And anyway, those were just beliefs of less advanced people, right? I'm shaking my head. I am shaking my head for every single person that had this belief that met a psychopathic narcissist. Because when you do that, your world and your belief system will be completely shattered. We were all lambs to the slaughter. Why? Because we knew nothing about evil. And our ignorance made us very vulnerable. We forgot spiritual warfare is real. And we didn't even know who our opponent was. How could we study something we don't actually know exists? And you may think that religion is teaching it in their churches or their centers, but they're not even them. So we've got no education about this. And we have a plain refusal to look evil directly in its face and call it for what it is, because most don't even know what it is or what it looks like. Most are expecting somebody that's truly a danger to humanity and who has a dark level intent and basically is a predator. We expect them to look as they are, to announce it on the surface. And this is a huge problem because we take things at face value and we always believe the exterior to be a reflection of the interior. We believe things to be as it says on the tin. But you open that tin and you find out it's not as it seems. And the worst and the most dangerous predators that are out there are almost always camouflaged. They jump you when you least expect them and how you least expect them when you're off guard with all of your defenses down. And you will rarely see them coming, which is why we need to rely on our sixth sense. And that is our intuition. And that isn't encouraged in today's world either, because we're too busy being distracted half of the time to listen or to know that we have a spiritual voice within us. And it's a protective guidance system. Because we've never been taught about the existence or workings of evil forces. And for many, that's a big no-no because it sounds too religious. But I'm not talking religious. I'm talking very practically because we've never been trained to see it. We're blind to its power. And because this is so invisible, it's an unfair fight until we get the awareness. Unfortunately, people are having to get this for themselves after very painful and destructive awakenings. I never believed in evil spirits or demonic forces until I pierced the terrifying veil of a psychopathic, narcissistic predator. And it's a spiritual experience for everybody that touches that and goes through it. But only those that have pierced that veil will know. Others are going to deny it. And we were the lucky ones to have survived the encounters, because many people don't. Because these abusive ordeals are very hard to escape from, and it's the psychopathic narcissist's intent for us to be completely destroyed. And sadly, it's so invisible to the naked eye that these dark forces are thriving in the shadows of our ignorance. We consider dangerous psychopaths and psychopathic narcissists to be existing in a fantasy reality, probably because of Hollywood, of those kinds of depictions. And we've put that at a distance from us. And people also get so much entertainment from those true crime series. But again, even if it's real life, we still put it at a fantasy distance away from us. We don't include it in our everyday life. And we wouldn't have a clue if it showed up today, how it's going to look. And also we wouldn't realize how close it could also be to us. Speaking of media depictions, actually, ironically, looking back at a show that I used to love as a teenager, which was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there's a character that plays the villain in season 3 called the Mayor. In my opinion, he is the most disturbing, scariest villain of them all. And that's because on the surface, he's very charismatic, he's moral, he's likable, and he's totally normal. Yet on the inside, he is so sinister and without any limits. And actually, I think that this is a perfect portrayal of a real-life malignant narcissist. And his story is that he has actually done dark rituals. He sold his soul and he worshipped Satan. And he's actually looking to ascend to becoming a pure demon. Now, as a fantasy-based, thing, that might sound like, it's unbelievable, but I think that that is a very accurate depiction of a psychopathic narcissist. But unfortunately, psychologists are not going to tell us that. They're not going to even know that kind of thing. Dr. Ramani isn't going to know this, as lovely as she is, of course. If you have been through this yourself, then you know it. But if you haven't, you wouldn't have a clue. And you're going to flat out refuse it because it's too uncomfortable to look at. That's it. So we flat out refuse the spiritual aspects of life. And yet when we continue doing this and putting all emphasis on the importance of just psychology and isolate the human mind rather than the spiritual battles that take place in everyday life between the forces of light and dark, and good and evil, piercing the veil of what's really going on every single day, under the radar, behind closed doors, in families, in relationships, totally invisible to the naked eye. Unless we get with the program, the dark forces will be continuing, and they're going to be in elation. And by the way, the ones that are working so hard to keep this covered and promoting the idea so strongly that this is a load of rubbish, we need to question their intentions. And I'd like to actually, make a quote from Jordan Peterson, because I saw a video where he said that a psychopath is a predatory parasite. And he also said that not everybody, obviously, with psychopathic proclivities is going to be foolish enough or criminal enough to be caught. And there was this first psychologist to study psychopaths called Robert Hare. And Jordan Peterson was saying that research was made and this checklist was developed from psychopathic behavior. And, they developed the diagnostic criteria for that, which apparently never became actually a formal criteria. But criminologists have used it a lot. So the psychopathic traits, they include number 1, being a parasitic predator, and number 2, Machiavellian, which is always thinking of ways to manipulate and to benefit situations for them and what they can get. Number 3 was actually narcissistic. They demand unearned social status. And number 4 is sadism. When sadism is present, they're cruel and they enjoy what they do. And this is actually a portrait of a dark personality. And then, there is this inclination to project our own moral humanity onto somebody that's nothing like us. And so some people can only imagine that psychopathic individuals do what they do because they've been hurt themselves. And although this is often the case, it's not always true, but it's often the case, but no one wants to get inside the real psychology of evil, because in order to understand it, you do have to go to very dark places within yourself, as Peterson, speaks about. And that does require effort. It does. And it probably, if you go there, is going to leave you feeling not very well. It's not a pleasant subject. I always say this. So many people would rather deny it. No, I can't look at it. It's too much. It's too complex. It's going to blow my brains. It's going to blow my perception of life and my belief system, and I'm not willing to go there. So I'd rather just close the book. It doesn't exist. We'd rather not believe, basically, that the nature of evil exists. We'd rather deny it. But by denying it, we're leaving ourselves open to it and we are enabling it. And there's actually no way of considering the subject of evil without then thinking about the root of where it comes from, and then it becomes a much larger spiritual question. And that's when it becomes too much. That's where the investigation closes for a lot of people, because when the spiritual is then investigated, then we start to assess the possibility of evil spirits and demonic entities, and this all becomes too much for most people. But the fact still remains, there are people existing in our world that are really not good souls, not good at all. And if you were to shine a torch into what they've got on the inside, you'd find things that you wouldn't want to see. The world basically is not willing enough to acknowledge the violence of emotional, mental and spiritual abuse. This is really serious, and all of this can lead to serious health conditions, and it can end people. Psychopathic narcissists willingly and happily destroy people's lives without any remorse or care. And when there's an absence of such love and empathy, there lies a danger to humanity. For it's my belief that on a spiritual level, the presence of love and empathy, it gives us a conscience, which acts as our guide and moral compass. Without it, will be a danger, because anything will be possible. And people that have love and empathy and a moral compass, they struggle so much to an absolute refusal to believe that anybody can be evil. But they absolutely can. There are some scary people out there that are going to make you think that they love you or care about you, and they really don't. Not only are you serving a purpose to them, but they want you destroyed. And It's like a card game to them. People are cards. They play people like cards. That's it. They're always looking at their hand, you know, and what their next move will be. But because they're creatures of such turbulence and they don't have patience often, if a shiny opportunity actually presents itself, they'll trade their cards at any given moment. Even, you know, if they're holding an ace in their hand, they basically act like young children because they have little to no self-control when it comes to impulses and doing what feels good in the moment. And they kind of fail to understand this concept of life, that short-term gratification doesn't always lead to long-term success or fulfillment. And these people are basically the orchestrators then of their own doom. And you could call that karma. But when I started sharing my story with friends, I tell them that I was involved with a psychopathic narcissist. And the most common reaction that I would get was people would laugh. They'd laugh at the word psychopath. Firstly, they think that I was joking, or they think that I was being insulting to an ex. And they'd laugh and I would say, I'm being deadly serious. Like, it's no laughing matter. And they laugh because of that word. It's become so commonly misused. And basically, many people call their ex-partners psychopaths. I left him because he was a complete psychopath, or she was a complete psycho. It's something that we use out of context. So when somebody actually has a relationship with a psychopath, nobody can get their heads around that at all. Nobody can. They'll either glaze over or they'll laugh. That's not healthy. Not only is that not healthy for survivors of narcissistic abuse, but that's not healthy for people, full stop. Because it shows us this is not visible in the world at all. We can laugh at these characters like Norman Bates or Christian Bale in American Psycho, but in real life, psychopaths are not the same. And this does need to be addressed because there are enough covert malignant narcissists in this world for this to be a real life problem. And it's a very scary experience for people to get into those relationships. And there are people that don't make it out. It's something that requires an intense battle. And that's when you get to fully see how much evil somebody has inside of them, how dark we can go. And when it comes to the subject of monsters and evil, something that is so inbuilt in most of us is believing that how somebody looks on the outside is how they are on the inside. So if I drop a beautiful person, a man or a woman in front of you, and I say, that's an evil monster, you're going to say, no, how can it be? They look so cute, or they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, I love them, oh, so sexy. That's not a monster. But if I drop a very scary looking creature in front of you, from outer space or whatever, and I say, that has a good soul, that's a good natured creature, you will run and scream and you'll say, how can it be? It looks so terrifying. And this is where the mask comes into play, and a lot of people don't understand how the mask actually works because the surface level is never the reality. They will appear as the complete opposite of what they actually are, and that's the danger. Because we're in the dark, we don't have the night vision goggles to identify these people. But they are amongst us. And I'm not wishing to frighten anybody with this podcast, but this is the reality. You know, when I look back upon the psychopath that I loved, that I fell in love with a mask, as everybody does. It wasn't the real person because they trick you into believing something very far away from the truth of who they actually are. They're not as they appear. And I'd actually go as far to say as like 95% of the people in their life probably don't know who they really are, because not many people get close enough to uncovering the truth. We find out so many negative things that are within them. It's not just negative, it's purely demonic. Any chance that they have to rob, lie, exploit, cheat, destroy anybody that crosses their path, even if it's old ladies with health conditions or babies, nobody would be spared. They don't think twice. You think that this is low, and with them, you're going to find out they can go lower. They mask their intent so they can manipulate people to do exactly what they want. That's it. But the longer that you're around a person like this, the more opportunity that you're going to see who they really are in different moments. And you'll also see the different switches in their character and their behavior as well. They can switch to very fake and superficial when there's suddenly an opportunity around them to exploit somebody. And you'll also be likely to see then explosions of rage and glimmers of cruelty behind closed doors where nobody else's eyes are on them. But you're going to see two very different things. You can see the mask, and that can be enjoyable to interact with superficially. But when you get to know the real character of that person, the real soul or lack of that person, you realize that you are touching pure darkness. And there's so much ignorance on this subject and general unwillingness to look at it. And this is exactly how these people are thriving. Because they know that people also want to see the good in others, to give the benefit of the doubt, to give chance after chance after chance. And sometimes when we're presented with the bad or the evil, we're not seeing it for what it is. We're justifying it. We're making excuses. We're looking always childhood trauma, whatever it might be. They know that there's moral shame of calling somebody evil, and they also know that there's moral shame in turning your back on somebody and saying, no, I can't work with them. They're gone. They're too far gone. I can't help them. Especially in the West, we aren't allowed to call somebody evil unless, of course, they're in prison or they've done like serious serial crimes. Then we can call them evil or a monster. But I can tell you, like I say, there are serious crimes that are taking place every single day to people around the world by these psychopathic narcissists. They're under the radar because that's where a lot of these people are hiding. And they're dangerous because they entrap and they enslave their victims, and they target who is going to be most loyal to them to destroy. And not only loyal, but kind, very, very kind, very helpful, very sweet, very naive people. We can't afford to go about life thinking that everybody's like us. That's a danger. We need to acknowledge that there are people that look just like us, that wish us harm on all levels, and we can't afford to look at them as anything less than the danger of what they actually are. We need to collectively wake up to the real world and the real threats and get out of our favorite TV shows and films that depict psychopathic killers as entertainment, because they're not existing inside fictional realities. They're inside our world, and we refuse to believe someone is an evil psychopath because they do such a good job of convincing us otherwise. The real danger to people's lives are masked, and we can't naively expect everybody to be just like us, because that makes people soft targets. We have to be aware of who these people are and what they're capable of. Just because you're not capable of doing some things, it doesn't mean that they're not. And if you knew what they were truly capable of, your mind would be blown. And I want to say this as a disclaimer, because I'm not asking anybody to change who they are. Believe in the good, but know that there's bad. And train yourself to be able to see the bad instead of turning a blind eye to it and ignoring all the signs. Keep faith in love, keep faith in humanity, but realize that not every person is on the same team as you. We've got to toughen up. We have to know how to deal with these individuals. We have to know about spiritual warfare. Our lives might come into contact with one of them or several of them. And if that happens, we can read the signs, and then we're able to extract ourselves away from them as quickly and as safely as possible. When somebody seems so nice and helpful, when they seem too good to be true, they're charming, they're flattering, we have to ask ourselves, who is this person? Where did they come from? Why did they suddenly appear? We have to be prepared, to run these kinds of background checks in our minds. We can't just accept that somebody's intentions are pure and honourable just because ours are. They're thinking about what they can get from you, and we need to consider, what do they think that they are going to get from me? What do they want from me? And this doesn't mean, turning yourself into a cynic, because I know plenty of people that aren't cynics, that see through fake masks immediately. And they have this because of their own experience. It's taught them that both good and bad exists, and many times the bad will reflect good, but don't be fooled into picking up something shiny with a label of gold, because people with real shine, you know, that comes from within. They don't have to wear it on the surface and throw it in somebody's face. Just know that not everybody is authentic. Some people are synthetic and insincere completely. We need to watch a person's actions and take what they say with a pinch of salt. We need to see, we need to observe people for quite some time. We need to be aware that these dark souls are existing in many guises, and they're looking to fool people. And they're banking on nobody having the information about who they are that exposes their game. Unfortunately, many people find these videos like mine and get the information too late after their experience. And I wish that this information was actually taught to people a lot sooner in schools. But if you've gone through this yourself, then I hope that you can be an advocate for this message to others in your life, to educate and inform those that are willing to hear. If it resonates with you, then please do drop me a comment below and share it with anybody in your life that you think would benefit from hearing this message. For now, thank you so much for watching. Take care, sending love, and I will see you all again next time.